Vine has a lot of potential with it being through her damage, her E, even her healing, or maybe even her speed, her haste, which is kind of shit. Her DPS is decent, her healing could be amazing, all in the right circumstances, and her E could be kind of incredible. However, those situations just never happen. A big issue I kind of thought about recently when it comes to the balancing of her kit is that a massive power budget in literally everything she has is all dependent on the idea that she's going to snowball. However, she recently got a rework, that rework being she has no snowball potential and that she has burst healing. With the removal of the snowball potential of her kit, all of her moves just become that much worse, despite the fact that they were already kind of disappointing. Before, her E used to be able to do a lot of damage if you consumed a lot of sprouts while using it. However, now because you only have a max of 5, it often hinders your progress on healing, which ends up being a really important thing. Her Q, always been god awful. However, because of the fact that you're not so reliant on having so many sprouts on the map anymore, the extra sprouts you get from Q, which again, same with E, you get sprouts when you use E, it's a massive part of the move and kind of a big thing the move has been balanced around. And yet, it doesn't do anything for her. Your M1s are fine enough to get enough sprouts, you don't need any more than you naturally get, which means her kit now lacks all the fluidity it used to have and how it used to connect into one another. It doesn't do that anymore. Furthermore, her E is kind of only really useful for one fighter, with that being skateboard and deboarding him. The issue is that the effects aren't strong enough, nor do they last long enough, and the damage isn't nearly enough for it to really do anything towards any other diver. For example, Shuriken doesn't even care about the rooted effect, because he doesn't use any mobility tools until he's getting out. Biographed, he can just catch up to you because at the end of the day, the haste you have with your sprouts, which again, also is a massive part to do with snowballing, isn't good enough because the only character, again, it's useful for against is Banhammer, because with every diver they have natural haste, so they're going to be either faster or the same speed as you. Therefore, you're not going to be able to get away. It's not something which ever helps you in escaping. It's just a thing which is there to bloat her kit. Again, her M1s as well kind of have this same ideology. The fact that she both heals and damages at the same time, she kind of does shitty damage. Like, if you hit every single shot on the same person, oh, it seems good, 50 DPS, that's good, right? But then, no, in practice you're not going to hit every shot. Single-handedly, the character with the lowest amount of damage. What I mean by this is whenever you look at the damage scoreboard, Vinestaff is going to end up doing all the time the lowest damage if everyone's good enough. Ultimately, that doesn't matter too much, right? However, it just goes to show that she can't really get kills very easily, and it takes a lot of effort to actually get any kills with her. Her ult, however, I think is the one saving grace about her kit. I'm not saying that her kit necessarily is bad, it's just, it's not like, okay, the concept of her kit is good. However, the execution just isn't that good, really, to be honest. Her ult though is actually good, as it gives a form of utility what her kit doesn't have. Plus, it kind of just is a good way to save people and has a massive AoE. I don't know, nothing bad to say about it. To quickly compare both Medkit and Vinestaff, Medkit has a lot more utility than Vinestaff has at all. Both his Q and E bring a lot to the table and give a lot of unique nuances to his kit. One of them cleanses, then one of them gives a short second of invincibility. They both burst heal, they both do damage. They both can be used as an anti-dive tool. All these different things which give these different moves stuff actually grasp onto, because at the end of the day, the differences of healers shouldn't really be primarily on how they heal, but more about their utility, as a healer support is more on the utility side of a characters. And then the big thing, Medkit's ult. This is obviously Medkit's ult isn't the only thing which makes Medkit better, as I just said. However, Medkit's ult easily outclasses Vinestaff's ult, and Vinestaff's ult will never be able to be as good as his unless they completely just recreate it or make her ult overpowered. Medkit's ult is a team-wide revive, massive burst healing, giving invincibility to the people who've been revived and healed. That will never be overthrown, right? It's such an incredibly good ult in terms of healing, and Vinestaff just isn't able to compare to that simply because of her ult just being very regular compared to Medkit's. However, it's been reworked, and it makes sense to be reworked, especially with the cost of both ults. Medkit's ult is 150 on the higher end, right? However, then you've got Vinestaff's ult, which is 135, but Vinestaff's ult isn't nowhere near good enough to be as close to costing as Medkit's, which kind of just creates a weird dynamic, because why does Vinestaff's ult cost so much when it doesn't do nearly enough to justify it, or it isn't strong enough to justify it? A big thing I do kind of find annoying about Vinestaff's healing is that you have a massive lack of agency over how you get it. Not how you get it, when you get it. When it comes to Vinestaff's healing, you have so many conditions you need to meet in order to get the minimal amount of healing. For example, the map needs to be semi-decent, has to have cover, your plants have to be in a good spot, which requires a lot of thinking. aka don't get them killed, they need to be in a place where your team are, they need to be hidden, they need all these different things. And then to finalize it off, you need to deal damage and hit people in order to actually level up your plants. And that takes such a long time to level up your plants to a point where you're gonna actually heal them, which all of that can just be completely wiped out through two things. Either someone just destroying your plants through an ult, through hitting them, or by you accidentally placing new plants, never mind 3, or your E kind of detrimentally hitting your plants and not allowing for you to actually level them up all the way, which is incredibly detrimental to it, by the way, especially since the addition of Vinestaff's E having such a massive hitbox on the hitbox for destroying the plants. It kind of just becomes a bit frustrating trying to deal with it, to be honest, because you have so many things you have to do just to heal. It doesn't feel often worth it. I assume that I've probably not spoken about a lot of her issues. She has so many issues. I don't necessarily think that she's a god-awful character in terms of design. However, because of the fact that they did these changes to her without any actual compensation buffs, and you could say, oh, but isn't burst healing a buff? Yeah, but I think it's definitely the right direction, but it's clearly not enough. It's clearly just not good. Anyways, and with all that, I can't just not talk about how you could fix Vinestaff. The first thing is a full rework. Obviously, I don't personally want this, however, I do think that her kit is very flawed in a way, which makes a rework make sense for her. However, her gameplay is enjoyable, I find it fun, and I don't necessarily think a rework is completely necessary in order to make her a character which actually feels good to play. Secondly, change and buff the abilities, especially the abilities, by quite a bit. Her Q is objectively, I'm saying objectively, okay, not subjectively, not my opinion, objectively the worst move in the game. You only get 40 damage, and it's incredibly situational to if your teammates are going to attack the people who are marked, and how many people who are marked, in order to get the lifesteal regen healing burst in healing circle, making the move just so incredibly RNG reliant and so unfun to play with, and just simply bad. Not only that, Vinestaff has some insanely good self healing. Vinestaff is incredibly tanky, and that's the one thing a lot of people find annoying about her, which is why lifesteal doesn't work in her kit. I don't think she should have lifesteal, because adding more and more self healing onto her, despite the fact she already has so much, doesn't make sense when she already as it just makes her feel too tanky. And especially since the lifesteal right now is kind of just really bad, you don't want to make the lifesteal any better, because if you make it better, then Vinestaff is too tanky and you can't kill her. What could you do with her E? Well, her E could do with some hitbox changes, especially. The hitbox for destroying plants needs to either be completely gotten rid of or toned down by a lot, as it's incredibly unfair to just destroy all of your plants. Even though there's actually nothing you can do about it, you can try purposely using your E at a different spot and strategically doing that. However, if you do that, you're just waiting and waiting, and it doesn't really do anything, especially for an ability which is on such a long cooldown, a cooldown of 10 seconds. Waiting so long for that, not even only all of that, the damage is so low and the effects just aren't very good. It's only good for skateboard, and skateboard already gets debodied by quite a lot of things, so it kind of just feels a bit redundant. The stun also, again, feels kind of impossible to get. I think that's a big complaint about E. The stun is so incredibly difficult to actually hit that it often feels like there's not even any point in trying to hit the E or banking on hitting the E, because even then, a 1.5 is it second stun? That is not doing anything. That's not doing shit. Okay, and then her M2 could do. Doesn't really need too much. All I would say is make it so the leveling up doesn't take as long. Allow for her to have some form of on command healing. And oh yeah, you have the healing when you place them down, but 20 healing is incredibly useless, and not even just useless, it isn't good enough. It barely often blocks a single hit. In fact, most of the time it won't block a single hit. It'll just be kind of redundant, especially when people have actual attack speed and can hit faster than you can often heal. Anyways, those are just some things I think you could do to change her to make her a better character. My main complaint is to allow her abilities to just be good and remove the fact that they kind of feel like they need to, that a lot of their power budget is on the fact that they could potentially be good in a snowball. That's all I say. Alright, well, I don't know how long this video is going to be, actually. I hope it's not long.